जय।
नामाचार्य श्री ठाकुर विकास की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवाचार्य गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण को गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गोवर्धन की जय। वृंदावन धाम की जय। नवदीप मायापुर धाम की जय। गंगा देवी की जय। योना माई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी रानी की जय। समवेत भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। इसका विधि संस्थापक आचार्य श्री भगवत की जय। गौ प्रेमानंद हरि बोल। All glory, all glory, all glory, all Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya
Namaskritya
Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtapraishu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Krishna Swadhamopagate Dharmajnanaribhisaha Kalau Nashtadrishamesha Puranarko Dhunodita. Grantaraj Shrimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 6, Conversation between Narada and Vyasadeva. We're on text number 16. Please repeat. Jayatah Charanam Bhojam Bhavanirjita Chetasa Autkantya Ashrukala Akshasya Hridi Asit Me Shanaihi Harihi Jayatascharnam Bhojam Bhavanirjita Chetasa Autkhantashu Kalakshasya Hridyasin Me Shanair Harihi Jayatascharnam Bhojam Bhavanirjita Chetasa Autkhantyashrukalakshasya Hridyasin Me Shanair Harihi. Jayatascharnam Bhojam Bhavanirjita Chetasa Autkhantyashru Shukalakshasya Hridyasin Me Haner Jayatascharnam Bhojam Bhavanirjita Chetasa Autkhantyashrukalakshasya Hridyasin Me Shanair Harihi. Jayatascharnam Bhojam Bhavanirjita Chetasam Utkantyashrukalakshyasya Hridyasin me shanair harihi Jayatascharnam bhojam
Bhavanirjita Chetasa
Bhavanirjita Chetasa Kalakshasya Hridyasin me shanair harihi Jayatah, thus meditating upon Charana Ambhojam, the lotus feet of the localized personality of Godhead. Bhava Nirjita, mind transformed in transcendental love for the Lord. Chetasa, all mental activities. Thinking, feeling, and willing. Outkantya, eagerness. Ashrukala, tears rolled down. Akshasya, of the eyes. Hridi, within my heart. Asit, appeared. Me, my. Shanaihi, without delay. Harihi, the personality of Godhead. Translation. As soon as I began to meditate on the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, with my mind transformed in transcendental love, tears rolled down my eyes, and without delay, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, appeared on the lotus of my heart. Please repeat. As soon as I began to meditate on the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, with my mind transformed in transcendental love, tears rolled down my eyes, and without delay, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, appeared on the lotus of my heart. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The word bhava is significant here. This bhava stage is attained after one has transcendental affection for the Lord. The first, initial stage, is called shraddha, or a liking for the Supreme Lord. And in order to increase that liking, one has to associate with pure devotees of the Lord. The third stage is to practice the prescribed rules and regulations of devotional service. This will dissipate all sorts of misgivings and remove all personal deficiencies that hamper progress in devotional service. When all misgivings and personal deficiencies are removed, there is a standard faith in transcendental matter, and the taste for it increases in greater proportion. This stage leads to attraction, and after this there is bhava, or the prior stage of unalloyed love for God. All of the above different stages are but different stages of development. All the above different stages are but different stages of development of transcendental love. Being so surcharged with transcendental love, there comes a strong feeling of separation, which leads to 8 different kinds of ecstasies. Tears from the eyes of a devotee is an automatic reaction, and because Sri Narad Muni in his previous birth attained that stage very quickly, after his departure from home, it was quite possible for him to perceive the actual presence of the Lord, which he tangibly experienced by his developed spiritual senses without material tinge. Om Jnanatimarantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Langhayati Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam. Dhyatas Charanam Bhojam Bhava Nirjita Chetasa Outkantyashru Kalakshasya Hridyasin Me Shanair Harihi. As soon as I began to meditate upon the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead with my mind transformed in transcendental love, tears rolled down my eyes. And without delay, the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, appeared on the lotus of my heart. What does the word Shanaihi mean? Slowly. Shanai, Shanai Ruparamed, Ityadi. So, how does Prabhupada translate the word Shanaihi in this verse? Sorry? Without delay. And furthermore, he says in the purport that it happens quickly. So we have a problem. Any first year student in Sanskrit knows that the word Shanai means quick, slowly. In fact, we have one of our favorite planets named Shanaishchara. Who is Shanaishchara? Shani, Saturn. He moves very slowly. How slowly? He takes 19 years to cross the sky. 19 years. You have to endure his... Anybody who's been through that knows what I'm talking about. So, Shanai means slowly. So what's going on here? Without delay. We have a problem here. Now, the problem is easily solved because actually Shanai also means not only slowly. As you know, many Sanskrit words have multiple meanings. So the word Shanaihi also means in stages. And that is key in this verse. Therefore, Prabhupada is elaborating. What are those stages? He goes through the whole list. Where is this list found? It's from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Anybody know the verse? Ado Sata Atha Syat. Yes. Okay. We just go through the stages. We have Shraddha, we have Sadhu Sangha, we have Bhajana Kriya, and we have Anartha Nivritti. From Anartha Nivritti we get Nishtha, then Ruchi, then Asakti, then Bhava, then Prema. So 9 stages. 8 or 9 stages, depending on how you divide them. Now, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, because these stages are not exactly hard and fast, there's a lot of overlap and they happen in sort of different ways for different people. In his commentary on Shrimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, Chapter 2, Text 21, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur adds a few more stages, which is interesting to note. Does anybody know what that verse is? 1:2:21. Bhidyate hridaya grantish chidyante sarva samshayaha. Yes. So Sridhar Swami and everyone who follows him says that what is the real result of an artha nivritti? Chidyante sarva samshayaha. All of your doubts, they become eliminated or dissolved. What kind of doubts do we have? Sridhar Swami even gives us an example. Very, very strong example, very important example of the kind of doubts that beset us when we try to take to Krishna consciousness. Anybody know? It's not in Prabhupada's books. You have to know the commentary. He says, the doubt that, this is not really possible for me. This is our main thing, isn't it? Yes, I believe in this process, and yes, I understand what the books say, but, I can't do this. This is our main problem. Therefore, he gives this example. So all these kinds of doubts, these will be destroyed. And when these doubts are destroyed, then what happens? Then we progress very quickly. In the beginning, where there's what? Ado? Where does that Shraddha come from? If you don't have that Shraddha, what are you going to do? He raises this question, Sridhar Swami raises this question back in chapter 2, text number 16. Shushrushoho Shradhanasya Vasudeva Katharuchi Syan Mahat Sevaya Vipra Punya Tirthana Shevanat. So we'd heard in the previous verse, text number 15. Anybody know that one? Yad Anudhyasina Yukta. Yes. So the rhetorical question is being raised. Who will not hear about Krishna if we understand that by hearing about Krishna, you get to destroy all of your karmic reactions? It sounds like a pretty good thing. So why will we not hear about Krishna then? Someone may say, well, but I don't have a taste. So Sridhar Swami therefore raises the question in the next verse. Here's what you do if you don't have faith. And anybody know the answer? You serve the sadhus. Sadhu seva. Also called Mahat Seva. And that's very important. Where do we hear this word Mahat Seva? In the 5th canto, Rishabh says the same thing. Mahat Sevam Dwaramahu Vimukte. They say that this Sadhu Seva, Mahat Seva, is the gateway to liberation. Now, what is Mahat Seva? What exactly is this Mahat Seva? Once again, Sridhar Swami has defined this for us in the same verse. Syan Mahat Sevaya. He says Mahat Seva means Nishpapasya Seva. Serving somebody who is not sinful. You cannot get the same reaction if you serve a sinful person, even if he's a devotee. There can be different kinds of devotees, right? What does Mahaprabhu say about how does he define the Vaishnava? Yeah, many definitions are given. How does he define the non-Vaishnava? That's maybe an easier question. Asat sadhu tyag a Vaishnavachar. And what kind of asat sadhu? Asat sangha? Two kinds. Krishna, abhakta. He's not a devotee of Krishna. Or he may be a devotee of Krishna, but Stri Sangha are. Person who is too attached to the opposite sex, and in particular persons who don't follow the regular principles. Very, very important thing to note here. Because we have seen many cases, persons who even purport to be spiritual masters, but they're not following. Therefore, Sridhar Swami says, Nishpapasya Seva. You have to find somebody who is not sinful. Not only not sinful, but preferably somebody who is even above karma, even above dharma, above piety, ordinary piety. That person is, devotion should extend that far. All right, so why are we saying all of this? Because Mahat Seva, by serving the Mahat, you can gain affinity for hearing about Vasudeva. And he says also, Sadhu Sangha Shastra Shravana Dwara. By sitting amongst the devotees and hearing the Shastras very carefully, then you also get faith. So we have two ways to get faith if you don't have faith. There's actually more than this. Can anyone think of a third way to get faith if you don't have sufficient faith? This is Think Haridas Thakur, Harinama Chintamani.
Hearing the holy name himself.
If we chant loudly Sankirtana, this is why we go to Union Square. This is why we go for Harinam Sankirtan. If people just walking by, if they hear Hare Krishna Mahamantra sung with love by sinless devotees, then they think, oh yes, I should be giving my life to God also. There's some purity will be aroused. So faith is also created in that way. So we have three ways. We can hear the holy name from real devotees, genuine devotees. We can render service unto those devotees. And we can at least sit in their company and hear something. Why? Because Sridhar Swami explains, if you just sit amongst the devotees and hear, eventually you will think, these people are really genuine about this. You'll notice this. Every one of us probably has already noticed this. That's probably why we joined ISKCON. we can see, look, these people are really into it. They have spontaneous discussions amongst each other, which are very deep and involved. They're really serious about this. What are they tasting? What is it that they're talking about that they're experiencing such a taste from? I should maybe consider there's something here. This is faith. In this way, Shraddha Bhavati. Shraddha will come about. So, this is brings about Shraddha. Now, what does Shraddha mean? What does Shraddha? What does that mean? What is faith? You can't just use words. You have to think. What do they mean?
Trust in something sublime.
Unflinching faith and some unflinching trust, Prabhupada says, in something sublime. And this is exactly what Jiva Goswami says in commenting on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, this verse that we've quoted, 1, 4, 15, and 16, Adau Shraddha verses. He says, Shraddha Tadartha Vishvasa. Tadartha Vishvasa. We're talking about how faith arises from hearing Shastra among the devotees. And then when he says what that faith, Shraddha, means, is Tadartha Vishvasa. You have trust. You trust that there's value in what they're doing. Artha means value. Or you can also say, Tadartha Vishvasa means you have faith in the meaning of what the scripture says. This is another way to look at it, because artha means both. It means meaning, and it also means value. Just like we hear, Shrimad Bhagavatarthanam asvado rasikaisaha. Anybody know this verse? Oh, you should know these things. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila chapter 22, text number 131, but it's also taken from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu only. So what does it mean? Shrimad Bhagavatarthanam, among all the important things that are stated in the Shrimad Bhagavatam, asvado rasikaisaha. You should sit with those who, rasikas, those who have a taste, and you should relish the meaning of the Shrimad Bhagavatam with such persons. You will relish. All you have to do is sit with them and hear, and your faith will be generated. All you have to do is try to render some service to them, and your faith will be generated. If you're hearing your rounds every day, or you're hearing the kirtan when you're singing, then your faith will also be generated. It may take some time, you may have to be patient, but it will happen. So this is an important verse. Shrimad Bhagavatarthanam asado rasikaisaha, and then the next half, sajati ashai snigdhao sadhu sangasvatovare. A person should seek out the association of persons who are like him, but whose faith is deeper than his own. Very important. 2 qualifications are given for sadhu sangha. 1, the person has to be swatovara, somebody who's better than me, someone superior to me. What does that superiority mean? How do we determine advancement in Krishna consciousness? What determines whether you're a Kanishta Adhikari, a Madhyama Adhikari, or an Uttama Adhikari? Yeah, only your faith. So somebody's faith is deeper than yours, but sajatiya also. The person has something in common with you. If you associate with someone who has something in common with you, that's very comfortable, no problem. But if his faith is not deeper than yours, what is the point? I'm not going to take you up. Now, if you associate with someone whose faith is deeper than yours, but you don't have something in common with him, then also it's very difficult to access. It's hard to appreciate because you can't relate. So these 2 things he gives. This is Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila chapter 22, text 131. It's worth knowing. It's also, as I said, taken from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.91. So this is faith. This kind of faith is important. And then the second sadhu sangha comes. What does that mean? The second sadhu sangha. Did you know about this? And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out. This is, he says, Dvitiya sadhu sango bhajana riti shiksha nibandhanaha. You keep associating with devotees. It's not that you get in the door by associating with devotees, by developing some faith. You have to continually associate with them. And what happens? then you learn the ways of bhajan. How to bhajana riti. Riti means riti rivas, we say in Hindi. The way that things are done. You learn everything about bhajan in this way. So this is what he says further. And then, what happens? If you associate with devotees with faith, if you're hearing, if you're rendering service, then what's the third stage? Bhajana kriya is understood, it's going on. Then we get anartha nivritti. Anartha nivritti syat. It should be that way. If you finding that you're anartha syat, anybody know this word syat? It's a Sanskrit verb. Means should come about. Would come about. It's optative. Means, not necessarily it does, but that it normally should come about. Why does he say it like that? Because it doesn't necessarily come about. If we're not hearing with faith, if we're not following the practices of bhajan very carefully, if we've not learned from the examples of those who are senior to us, and those whose examples we find also in the Shrimad Bhagavatam, then we may not finish this stage of anartha nivritti. May not, I mean to say, usually we don't. Actually, it's a fact, we have to admit. Usually, we do not get through the process of anartha nivritti in one lifetime. Therefore, Krishna says, Manushyanam sahasreshu ityadi. What are the statistics? One guy out of many hundreds and thousands figures out that let me think about spiritual life, let me do something while I'm a human being, while I can. So he tries. And out of many such persons we see in our society, how many are actually perfect? Because most of us are snagged on something during this process of anartha nivritti. What kind of things will snag us? We discussed them yesterday. Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, text 10. Raga, Bhaya, Krodha. These are the three things that Prabhupada elaborates. Very wonderful purport he gives to that verse. You can study it in your spare time. He elaborates on how, he keeps repeating the same points also, just to drive it home. What are the problems we have? So this is why we don't get through anartha nivritti. But it should happen. And when we get through anartha nivritti, then we come to which stage again? Nishtha. And what does nishtha mean?
Firm faith.
Firm faith. What does firm faith mean?
Means you stop running away from Maya and you start running towards Him.
Or in the words of Jiva Goswami, it means tatravikshepena satatyam. You have constancy. Just like the word satata. We know the word satata, right? Yeah. Satatam kirtayanto ma. Means constantly. So satatyam is a noun. It means, constancy. What kind of constancy do you have? Avikshepena. You're not splayed out. Vikshepa means to splay out. Either you're spaced out, or you're neglectful, or you're restless, or you're distracted. All these things fall into the category of vikshepa. It's a great word. So we have to be very careful. When our process of anartha nivritti is finishing up, not even necessarily done, but when we're well along the way of anartha nivritti, then we can start to focus on this very nasty anartha, vikshepa, to space out, to be distracted, to be waylaid, to be somehow or other, distracted from our determination to become Krishna conscious. Okay, so, as we said, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in describing exactly how the knot in the heart is cut to pieces, he explains 14 stages. We've just discussed 9 stages. At least we've mentioned 9 stages. We've discussed the first 4 or 5 of them. So what are the 14 stages he mentions? Satam kripa. Satam. Have we heard this word satam?
Always.
No. That's satatam. Satam. Shrindatam. Yes, satam prasangatma virya samvido. Very good. Means of the saintly period, the real people. Actually, sat means real. Therefore, satya means truth. So somebody who's real, genuine, that person is satam. So satam kripa, get his mercy. Get that person's mercy. And mahat seva, this is again, we've already described. Shraddha Guru Padashrayaha. Faith has to be there, and you have to take shelter of the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master. Bhajaneshu spriha. You have to have a particular aspiration in bhakti, in your bhajan. You have to be aiming at something. Lakshana. Just like the Bhagavatam says. Arrow. What is that? Anybody know this verse? Om is the target. The arrow is the jiva. You fly towards the absolute truth. This is also from the Upanishads. The same verse is there. All right, so lakshya hona padega means you have to have some particular aim. Bhajaneshu spriha, bhakti. And you have to be very, I take it as bhakti means committed, devoted to that aim. Then, anarthabhagama tataha. Then you'll go through anartha nivritti. Nishtha, ruchir, athasakti, these are the same. Rati, you get some affection. We can say this means asakti. And prematha darshanam. You get prema, and thereafter you get darshan of the Supreme Lord. We're talking about darshan in this verse. I'm not getting off the point. It's very central to this verse. Therefore he mentions darshanam. And harer madhuryanubhava. You have the personal experience of the sweetness of Hari after you have his darshan. Ityarthaha syuhu chaturdashaya. There should be these 14 stages, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says. Okay, so how did this happen with Nad and Muni? Let's look at the verse. Bhavena nirjitam. What does that mean according to Sridhar Swami? Bhavena means bhaktya, with devotion. And nirjitam means vashikritam. What does vashikritam mean? This is hard to know. Those who speak Indic languages, you may know. Vash. Uske vash mein hona. To become under the control of someone. It's like vashikarana mantras. The tantrics will sell you how to control somebody. So, vashikritam, to conquer by bhava, means to come under the control of this bhakti, one's consciousness, he says. And what happens then? Utkantyashru, the word is used. Utkantya, this is a tough word. It comes from, it's a noun formed from the it's a noun formed from another noun. The other noun is utkantha. Govindam kantha kupake. Kantha means the throat. And utkantha means? Why do we call this? Utkantha means eagerness. Picture the gopis. Mother Yashoda sends the tall gopis up to the Chandrashala. There's these little, what do you call them? These little cupola type things that you have on the roof of buildings in Vraj. Huh? Not exactly an alcove, it's like a little... Huh? Like a mandapa. In the south we have mandapas, but there's a name for them, I forget what you call them. They're also called Chandrashala. It's a place from which you can view the moon at night. Because, it's pretty hot in India. You want to see the moon and feel cool. So Yashoda, around dusk, she'll send tall gopis up to that place. Why the tall gopis? They can see farther. They're a little bit higher. So she sends the tall gopis up here to look for Krishna, and she sees off in the distance there's some dust. What does that dust mean? Godhuli kal. Cow dust time, they call it. What does it mean when you see the dust? The cows are coming back means who's coming back with the cows? Yes, and so they're very eager. And they're like this, looking. Is he there? Where is he? This is called utkantha. Samutkantha, as another word is used. Completely, eager. So eagerness. Tears of eagerness. Utkantyashru kala. Rolling down of his eyes. Why? Jiva Goswami comments, Jayata iti shanai saurabhyadi kramena. In the beginning you get a fragrance of the Lord. Just like my god sister Govinda Dasi told me, because she spent so much time with Srila Prabhupada. She said the first thing you would hear Srila Prabhupada's slippers shuffling along the floor. Prabhupada always used to wear house slippers. So you would hear that sound of slippers coming. And then she said you would get the fragrance of sandalwood mixed with roses. That's what Srila Prabhupada smelled like. So in this way, Jiva Goswami says, first thing we get the fragrance of the Lord, and then Hridyasit. Then he appears in our hearts, or in our minds, we can say. And then finally, Swayameva Abhibhutavan. He himself revealed himself personally, right before us. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur develops this a little bit further so that we can understand. What does he say? Bhava nirjita, to be conquered through bhava, means prema vashikrita, to be controlled by love. This is we've already discussed. And cetasa in this case, what is the word used? Cetasa, he said, means manasa, with a mind. Hridi, in the heart only. Jayato mama hari, I was meditating on Hari within the heart. This is how it starts. Just like when we're hearing Hare Krishna mantra, it should go into the ear and go into the heart. Je Gauranga Madhuri Lila, Jare Karne Praveshila, Antar Hriday Nirmala Bhelotar. Narottam Das Thakur says, when we hear the Leelas of Gauranga, they shouldn't just go in the ear and out the other one. It should go down into the heart, and you hold it there. And when we hear our japa, we should also like this. It goes in the ear, it goes into the heart, and we hold it there. That's what he's talking about. This is the second thing. Tato hrit vrittishu. Shanai kramenati. Kramena siti. Agatyagre bhuva. Gradually, by stages, this is the crucial thing that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur adds here. We've already described, Shanaihi means slowly, but Prabhupada keeps saying it happens very quickly. So what happens quickly? The first stage only happens quickly. Then the other stages have to follow. You have to be diligent. It will come. Hote hote. So it comes gradually and it comes quickly at the same time. So in the beginning we get the scent of the Lord, or we hold him within our hearts, meditating on his sound, because in Kali Yuga, mantra murtim amurtikam. You don't see the Supreme Lord as much as you hear him. This is the process for Kali Yuga. So this is what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says. And then he goes on. Shanayeravi prathamam hridiyavir bhavuva. He gives an alternative interpretation. The first thing is that Shanayer means the first stage is that he appears in your heart. We've been discussing. Then, hrit vritishu, in the functions of the heart, the Lord appears. And tisrishu, nasika shrota chakshusha api sangha. You get through your sense of smell, through your sense of hearing, and through your vision, you get the revelation of the Supreme Lord. And then he explains how that's so. Saurabhya nupura. Sangha saurabhya. Sangha saurabhya means when he is in your proximity, you get this fragrance of the Lord. Just like when Prabhupada came in your proximity, you would get this fragrance, sandalwood and roses. And then nupura saundarya. For your ear, these three senses have been mentioned, correct? The nose, the ear, and the sight. So for the nose, you get the fragrance. For the ear, what are you hearing? Nupura. Nupura means? Ankle bracelets. Jagannath Mishra and Shachi Devi, when they were worshipping at home, they kept hearing ankle bracelets. And they're not seeing anybody, but then they look and they see little tiny footprints. Nimai's footprints all over the floor. He's there. We can't see him, doesn't mean anything. He's there. So you hear the Lord's Nupur. And then, Shri Mukha Saundarya Grahanartham Avir Vibhuta. for the purpose of allowing us to grasp his beautiful lotus face, the beauty of his beautiful lotus face, he manifests before us. This is the idea. So, then he says, he's speaking in the voice of Narad Muni. Kidrishasya mama. What was my condition at that time? Audkantin ashruni kalayato dharyato akshini yasyatasya. So his eyes were naturally, you can imagine, if you have this experience of the Lord, you're going to be shedding tears. You will shed tears. Do not entertain, don't harbor this doubt. No, I can't do this. This is for the great souls. No, you can do this. Everyone can do this. What does Krishna, Arjuna is also doubtful of his own position. What does Krishna say? Nahi kalyana krit kaschid durgatim tata gachati. You never get a bad destination if you're doing the auspicious thing. Now, what is the auspicious thing we're doing here?
Devotional service.
Now, what kind of devotional service? Pure devotional service in what form? We're performing Sankirtana, my friends. What is the most fortunate position in this material world but to be performing Sankirtana in New York City? Of all places, the most demoniac belly of the beast, as they say. And we're performing Sankirtana Yajna. Do you not think that Krishna is going to reciprocate with that? We heard this morning, Kashtin me priyakritama, there's nobody more dear to me than somebody who's doing this. Do not doubt this for a moment. You carry on with full enthusiasm. Mahotsaha, right? And you gradually go through these steps. Don't expect it to happen just so quickly. The first step happens quickly. But we already taken the first step. We have Shraddha. We're taking the Sadhu Sangha. We're engaged in Bhajana Kriya. And we are undergoing an Arjuna Vritti. Everyone here is here because we've experienced this process to some degree. It works. We're not as bad as we were several years ago. I think everyone can agree with this. So, we just have to continue. The period of difficulty in spiritual life is only in the beginning, only in this Anarjuna Vritti period. Once the Anarjuna Vritti is done, and we become Nishtha, and how do we define Nishtha? Anybody remember? Avikshepena. Without distractions, without, temptations and doubts and so many things. Without spacing out, neglect, all these things. Once we are in the position of Nishtha, very quickly we advance, very quickly. Why? Because there's nothing obstructing us any longer. Here in New York City, not New York City, I don't know New York City, in Los Angeles, I was chanting japa one day waiting for the street light to turn green. And I heard this noisy flock of birds over me, all squawking, loud squawking all at once. I looked up, and what did I see? A flock of bright green parrots, exactly like the ones that we have in Vrindavan, in Los Angeles. They're not native. What happened? Because somebody had some parrot, and they let the parrot go, and somehow this parrot found another parrot in the greater Los Angeles area, and they just started multiplying. Now you've got flocks of parrots who have been naturalized in Los Angeles. Where am I going with this? The point is that they have no natural predators in that biosphere. And so there's nothing to check their rampant growth. And therefore we see huge flocks of them, and they're so loud. Anybody who's been to Vrindavan, parrots are very loud. They make a they're not very sweet and cooing like the mourning doves or the kokila. No, they just quack. So therefore we're told again and again, don't chant like them. You can teach a parrot to chant, but the chanting should be sweet like the kokilas, and the heart should be soft also. All right, so anyway, my point is this. Once the anarthas have been cleaned out by going through anartha nivritti and keeping the association while performing bhajan, then there's nothing to stop you, and you can grow like that. in biologists, they have this J curve of biological growth. When you've got a fast rate of reproduction due to no natural predators, at a certain point, it may not take off for a while, but when it does, it really goes fast. Greased lightning, as they say. You can imagine lightning is fast enough. Imagine lightning when it's greased. Then it's really fast. So, this is what happens. After the stage of Nishtha, that's why with the Ruchi comes very quickly, Asakti follows that, then Bhava Bhakti awakens, and this is the point of today's verse. Bhavena Nirjita. We become overwhelmed, Vashikrita, by that Bhava. And then we see, because in the stage of Prema, you're going to see Bhagavan. So Nama and Rupa and Guna and Leela. These things are revealed to us as we're chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Nama Anukirtanam. Anukirtana means according to the ways that we've been taught, as we discussed yesterday, in the ways that we've been instructed. If we're chanting like that, avoiding the 10 offenses, then we too can come to Narad Muni's level. This is the whole point of him mentioning it at all. Otherwise, for whom is this book being spoken? Does Vyas really need to hear the Shrimad Bhagavatam? Or do we really need to hear the Shrimad Bhagavatam? So. All right, this is a conversation between Narad and Vyas, and Narad is actually speaking to all of us. So, Prabhupada outlines all these stages in his purport, and then he says, tears from the eyes, let's start from Bhava Bhakti. Being so surcharged with transcendental love. Srila Prabhupada never translates bhakti as just devotion. Have you noticed this? What does he say instead?
Devotional service.
Pure devotional service, transcendental, loving service. I mean, so many ways he wants to make it absolutely clear. You have to, there's a few things actually. Number one, transcendental. What does that mean? Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma Nashochiti Nakangshiti Samasarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktam Labhate. You get bhakti, real bhakti, when you are transcendental, when you're liberated. Brahma Bhuta liberation. And what else? It's not enough that you're transcendental. What else has to be there? Loving. Means Bhava Bhakti hona chahiye. You should have also Bhava Bhakti. You should feel something. You should persevere in your devotion such that you get to that stage. And then finally, transcendental and loving and service. You have to do something practical. Do something practical. You have to act on Krishna's behalf. And how do we act on Krishna's behalf in this world? We further his mission. We know what he wants. We have to become the agents. Okay. So Srila Prabhupada says, being so surcharged with transcendental love, there comes a strong feeling of separation. That is bhav. It's not that, I've seen Krishna now, no. It's more like, where is he? Krishna, please. Autkantya means, remember, we discussed this, so you're waiting for him to appear. This is actually the process taught by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this strong feeling of separation leads to 8 different kinds of... What are those 8 different kinds of ecstasies? Ashta Sattvika Vichar. They're actually bodily symptoms, of which one is tears. Tears. Tears from the eyes of devotee is an automatic reaction. Because Sri Narad Muni in his previous verse attained that stage very quickly after his departure from home, it was quite possible for him to perceive the actual presence of the Lord, which he tangibly experienced by his developed spiritual senses without material tinge. In logic, this is called Anvaya Vyatireki Nyaya. You cover the positive and you cover the negative. Prabhupada says here, he perceived the Lord directly with his developed spiritual senses, without material tinge. There's no way to misunderstand this.
Yeah.
And Srila Prabhupada has always, he writes his books in this way. There's just no way to misunderstand what he's saying. So, therefore we should be very enthused about distributing these books to more people today than we did yesterday. It was 80 books, right? 80 something. So, we have every reason to be enthused about this. And we have every reason to expect that just as Nada Muni attained this stage of Bhava Bhakti, so will we. Just continue. Stay the course. Stay at Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet, as we discussed. One of the stages Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur asks, or adds here, is Guru Padashraya. All we have, it's very simple what we have to do. We just have to make the determination to do it with faith. Okay, have any questions or any comments? Yes.
There's the wonderful purport that Prabhupada writes to 9.3 Bhagavad Gita. Those who are not faithful on this path must return to repeated birth and death. Prabhupada gives a simple definition of faith. I don't remember, but I believe he's quoting the chart.
Can someone hand me a Bhagavad Gita? Is there? We'll look it up.
In the closet, we have
Closet man.
the closet, they like to put
Faith, the simple faith that by serving Krishna, everything required and
9.3. Yeah, he quotes Chaitanya Charitamrita to that effect, correct? A very well-known couplet. Yeah, that's right. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita it is said that faith is the complete conviction that simply by serving the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna one can achieve all perfection. Anybody know that one? Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yeah, I forgot just in the moment as well. Sudriha Nishchay. The word is used there. Yeah, it's a very, in general, this purport, 9.3, is very relevant to this topic of faith. It's a good idea to study it. The other night in Brooklyn also we read chapter 3, text number 31, wherein Srila Prabhupada similarly says, an ordinary man with firm faith in the eternal injunctions of the Lord, this is what Jiva Goswami meant when he said, Tad Artha Vishvas, you believe what the scripture says. An ordinary man with firm faith in the eternal injunctions of the Lord, even though unable to execute such orders, becomes liberated from the bondage of the law of karma. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord, but because one is not resentful of this principle and works sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, he will surely be promoted to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness. Isn't that encouraging? Yeah. So, these are some things we can think about here. Anything else? Yes.
So, one time this one sannyasi came and he was saying that ISKCON is not the society for Sukriti, Angyata Sukriti. But it seems like in some way that's like one of the only ways to preach to the fallen people is you have to just build up their credit.
That's
true. They're not going to associate, they're not going to serve devotees by their own volition.
That's right.
So what would you say to that?
I would say what Srila Prabhupada said in 1976 when he was touring the Manhattan skyscraper and saw the restaurant and was very favorably impressed. He turned to Tamal Krishna Maharaj and said, from now on, don't bother opening any more temples. Just open reading rooms and restaurants. This is how you do it. Everywhere I go, if there's a restaurant there, there's life, there's preaching, there are devotees being made. I've seen it. In Dallas, I remember when they first opened that restaurant, Tamal Krishna Maharaj first opened it, he planned he was meticulous. Every little detail he personally was involved. And they did a very nice media blitz, just like these gay people are doing now with this Stonewall business. All over the city, you have no escape. So many, many nice customers came from the very beginning. But what I used to see is that they come in, there's a front door of the temple. If you turn left, you go into the restaurant. If you turn right, you go into the temple. So they would come through the foyer. They would always only turn left. They would sit down, eat, pay, and leave. They would never turn right and visit the temple. So I'm thinking, all right, Agyata Sukriti, they're getting prasadam, they may be benefited at some point. Then, for years I'm seeing the same regular customers every day. They don't take any books, they don't even stop in the gift shop. They eat, they pay, they leave. So, what's going to happen? Years later, almost 17, 18 years later, I came in the temple and saw one of those customers finally decided to turn right. And he's sitting there absorbing the vibe the way they do, So, all right, maybe, kuch hota hai. Something may be happening. Then I came back in 2009, and I was shocked because when I went into the temple room, I saw they were just going to begin the arati, and the pujari was just, washing the conch. How they do it? It's one of those customers.
Oh my God! Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
He had been initiated, and now he was doing the arati of Radha Kalachandji. Then, the same day, this is a wild story, the same day I went down to the treasury, and I saw that one of those customers was now working in the treasury balancing the accounts.
Oh my God.
In the evening, when I came out of the temple room, I saw 2 or 3 of those same old, long-standing customers. They were prepared to go out in Harinam Sankirtan.
What the Lord said.
So it works. It may take some time. Just like with us, it may take some time. But do not underestimate the power of prasadam. Mahaprasada govinde ityadi. You know the verse. What does it mean? What does the verse mean? Yeah, somebody who has very little piety, that person doesn't have full faith in this Mahaprasadam. I've seen this with my mother also. When I was in Govardhan, I went to visit my mother, I thought, for 2 weeks. I packed a suitcase for 2 weeks. But when I was there, she had a massive stroke and heart attack. She ended up comatose, and the doctor said she'll die in a few hours. But she didn't die. She continued to convalesce. Many have told me, because I was there giving her Krishna consciousness, she was hearing Prabhupada every day in the hospital, even she wasn't conscious. Finally, she came out of her coma, and after she had to learn how to talk all over again, she had to learn how to walk all over again, she had to, it took about a year in the hospital after that before she could finally go home. But then she's invalid, and she needs somebody to care for her, so what could I do? Can I leave her in that circumstance? I stayed with her, and I was cooking prasadam for her every day. For 4 or 5 years I did this, living out of a suitcase with 2 weeks worth of supplies. And the payback came. It nearly killed me to take care of her. Anybody who's been a caregiver, Anybody who has not been a caregiver, be careful. It's notorious. But the payback for me came when, about a year before she left this world, she told me, you know what? I just realized that all the things that I used to eat, I don't care about those anymore. I'm more attached to what you're cooking than to anything I ever used to eat.
Wow.
What does that mean? It means her subtle body had been purified. She's taking prasadam for 4 years, every day. That means she's going to get a human birth. And then not only that, but she wants this prasadam, what I was cooking for. So she'll take birth where she can get prasadam. Not only a human, but probably a devotee.
Wow.
And by the time she left this world, she was wearing Kantimala, Gaudiya Vaishnava Tilak. Last thing she ate was Sandesh offered to Rukmini Dwarkatish at Mangalarati. She had tulsi on her tongue. She was hearing Akhanda Kirtan for about 3 days just before she left, in her room, in the hospital. Pankaj said some prayers for her at Mayapur. She had tulsi leaf on her tongue. We sprinkled her with Braj Laj, dust of Vrindavan. and Charanamritam, and she went away peacefully, smiling. Very peaceful, very, very content. I'm sure she didn't go down. So do not underestimate the power of prasadam, and do not underestimate likewise the power of Harinam and the power of books. These are Prabhupada's 3 weapons in our fight to push back against those who would turn this world into a place for only demons. We have a mission to perform. We are entrusted with this sacred mission. We have to take it seriously. That's a long answer for a simple question. Is it okay? You wanted to add something?
In these stages of devotional service, where is the Kanishta, where is the Madhyama, and where is the Uttama?
Good point. There, you can make some correlations. You know, as I said, it's not just a hard and fast 8 stages that are, very cleanly separated. It's more like a spectrum, and the colors kind of meld into one another. And as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur described, there's not just 8 or 9 stages, there's actually 14. And you can even subdivide beyond that if you want to. So I look at it as a kind of a continuum. We know that Kanishta, the very word Kanishta means the youngest, so he's neophyte. And youngest means he's going to be full of anarthas. It's understood. By the time one gets to Madhyama Adhikar, he may still be he may still be undergoing anartha nivritti, but he has stronger faith than when he began. This is the point. Or he may have pushed through anartha nivritti, and he may have actually come to the stage of nishtha. Generally, it's understood that Kanishta, that the Madhyama Adhikari will be a little bit nishtha. So, and then naturally, you cannot get to bhava bhakti unless you're really advanced. So, not necessarily uttama adhikari, but, very, very advanced. So these 3 are also divided. Kanishta, madhyam, kanishta uttama. There's 3 times 3 is 9, 9 times 9 is 81, 81 times 81, you get the idea. So it's a continuum. But the easy, one simple rule that governs all of it is yasya deve parabhaktir yatha devi tatha guru. Not surprising. You just, stay tight, guru parashraya, with faith, render service according to the instructions. Sab kuch ho jaye. Everything will come. Is that okay?
And so, when a person, after crossing the stage of anartha nivritti, they don't have any doubts, there's no confusion, do they still pose questions to the spiritual master? Is there still pariprashna, or?
No, it never stops, because our refinement of our service never stops. It's part of this bhajana spriha that we heard from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. We're constantly striving for a better level of devotional service. And, for that purpose, the spiritual master is always going to be relevant. And the pariprashna and seva will always be there. Even Srimati Radharani, even Lalita Vishaka and other gopis, these are the gurus of the whole creation. Both the spiritual world and the material world are following them. But they have gurus. Guru Gaurava Sevya Bhavehi. This is stated in the Brahma Samhita. Guru Gaurava means respect for the gurus. Gurus means elders also. Parnamasi, Nanda Maharaj, Yashoda, like this. So the guru is always there. Even in this world, guru is there, and in the spiritual world, guru is also there. And it never stops. Now that may sound very discouraging for those of us whose faith is so weak and whose anarthas are so strong that we can't imagine, actually getting somewhere. But for the devotee who is awake in some degree of ruchi and asakti and even bhava, this is ecstatic. The fact that we're constantly taking shelter, constantly learning new things, this is what it means to dive deep into the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. The Anandam Buddhivartana Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. The ever-increasing ocean of the nectar of Bhakti Rasa. Is that okay? Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah. in your life, how did you develop faith? You mentioned three things.
Yeah. Somehow or other, I was fortunate that I had some faith from the beginning. I was always very religious, but not the kind of faith that I have now. The faith has been very much, refined and elevated with knowledge, of the process, and through good association, I've been instructed, how to advance. I mean, maybe I was pious. Fortunately, I grew up just a few blocks away from the Los Angeles Hare Krishna temple. And so for most of my life, I remember seeing the devotees around. I knew that they were there. I knew who they were. And being godly by nature, I had some attraction to that. That was my good fortune. But, the real training of the faith and steering, of the faith into a particular trajectory towards this, Gaudiya Vaishnava Bhakti, that just came by the grace, divine grace. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's divine grace took the form of Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada's divine grace took the form of Tamal Krishna Goswami, and his divine grace impelled the devotees of California to preach Krishna consciousness very vigorously. We know that in the beginning, he was the one who organized West Coast Sankirtana, both in San Francisco and again in Los Angeles. We have to appreciate that. How many people here have read Nectar of Devotion? Raise your hand. Yes, everybody has read Nectar of Devotion. We are indebted to Tamal Krishna Goswami. Why? Because for his efforts to take all the headaches away from Srila Prabhupada, he took that sacrifice upon himself. Because of that, Srila Prabhupada was able to sit peacefully in his apartment on Hayworth Avenue in Los Angeles at that time and just focus on writing this book, Nectar of Devotion. And one of the many headaches that he took away from Prabhupada so that Prabhupada could focus on writing his books is how do we distribute these books? How do we get the holy name out there? How do we distribute prasadam? How do we attract people to the Sunday feast? What do we do? He had a kind of brain that could do like that. So we're very fortunate to devotees like him. If I got a book from somebody, it's because he sent somebody out. He was the temple commander. So, that actually happened. We got books when we were young because we were constantly running into devotees. We were just a few blocks away. So they gave us books, but the books didn't mean much. We as kids, we looked at the pictures only. And we used to ride our bicycles by the temple and make fun of the devotees. But I actually was attracted. And when my intelligence started to mature a little bit, I opened the books and, my God, it was like a bomb. Transcendental time bomb. Prabhupada, I think that's Prabhupada's analogy. Yeah. The time bomb. It's like tick, 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 tick. Just, the person has to mature. And, you get the books out there, he said, and the books will act. The books will act. The books will act. Why the books? Because these books are Krishna. Each one is a deity. Just put it in the person's hand. There's no benefit. What is his life? Now, from this point on, finished. It's just a question of time. When the thing is ticking, and then when he opens it up, and my God, I didn't realize that. So you give him the holy name, soften up his heart, so that he has some degree of faith. Then when he reads the book, oh God. What is it, Sapta Rishi? No, this is a Chaturvyuha. 4 books, SSR and Bhagavad Gita as it is, Ishopanishad, and oh my God, what a powerful combination. Really good. Really good. Okay, so Param Vijaya. Anything else? We should probably stop. I'm sure it's late now. Jai. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
His Grace Mukunda Datta Prabhu ki Jai.